morning's reading is A Blessing for Risk Takers and Failures by Robin Tanner. Are you ready, Mary Jane?
I'm ready.
Excellent. We're doing this in tandem. Today we share a blessing for losers, risk takers, all failures far and wide. Blessed are they who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip the pants, skin the elbows, and bruise the ego, for they shall know the sweetness of risk.
Blessed are they who make giant mistakes, whose intentions are good, but impact has injured, who know the hot sense of regret and ask for mercy, for their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness.
Blessed are they who have seen a D or an F or a C or any letter less than perfect, who are painfully familiar with the red pen and the labels as less than, for they know the wisdom in the imperfect.
Blessed are they who try again, who dust off, who wash up, who extend the wish for peace, who return to sites of failure, who are dogged in their pursuit, for they will discover the secret to dreams.
Blessed are they who refuse to listen to the naysayers, for their hearts will be houses of hope.
Blessed are they who see beyond the surface of another, for they will be able to delight in the gift of compassion.
Blessed are they who stop running the race to help a fellow traveler, who pick up the fallen, who stop for the injured life, for they shall know the kindness of strangers.
Blessed are they who wildly, boldly abandon winning, for they shall know the path of justice.
Thank you, Mary Jane and Chris. That blessing was just perfect for today. I have a confession to make. Armin and I are both really habituated to watching old reruns of Perry Mason. The 1950s black and white courtroom drama, for those of you who are too young to remember. These programs are quite soothing and very predictable. A murder usually happens at around 8:15 p.m. And after some detective work, the courtroom drama begins at about 8:35. The defendant is always innocent. And by 8:55, the real culprit, overcome with guilt and under Perry Mason's really serious scrutiny, is finally dramatically confessing, "I did it. I had to do it." Fade to commercial break. And at 9 p.m., another episode begins. These are soothing because the drama always ends with justice being served and predictably on time. Well, these hour-long programs are regularly punctuated by commercials that actually reduce the actual program to about 35 minutes. I am particularly annoyed by the commercial break that features a view of a woman's stiletto heel tearing the hem of her pants. And as soon as that happens, this frantic voice comes over. "Oh no, it happens. You tear your clothes. No time to mend it. You need Mighty Mend." And Mighty Mend, it turns out, is a kind of a bonding agent. And if you squeeze a little bit out of the tube onto the edge of the tear and then bring the edges together, it mends it in seconds, if the commercial is to be believed. The closing pitch of the commercial is an American flag in a gale force wind. It's torn fabric holding fast where the Mighty Mend has been applied. It should be so easy. So it's so very clear now that the fabric of our country is at the very least quite frayed and perhaps seriously torn, and Mighty Mend won't fix it. We find ourselves on the other side of a threshold facing a future that is kind of dark, unknown, uncertain. Around us, the world continues to face immense challenges, conflicts, divisions, loss, a shared longing for peace and justice. These are heavy times. Feelings of anguish, anxiety, powerlessness, and even despair are deeply felt by many. So over the last week and a half, I have wrestled mightily with the question of how to move forward, how to move through the negative feelings that cost me so much energy that might well be used more creatively. So as I went about the mundane tasks of attending to the recycling and taking out the compost, I kept asking the question, what's required now? This is how I pray. I just ask questions. And by Monday morning of this past week, a little glimmer of a response began to form, and it was not one that I expected to hear, maybe not even one that I wanted to hear. But when we pray for wisdom and guidance, sometimes the answer is going to be challenging. On Monday morning, I was making up the beds and reflecting, and the answer that came was, think about forgiveness. And my gut response was, oh no, it's just too soon, too hard to go there. But the challenge had been laid down. And it may well be too soon, and it may well be too hard. The issues are so big, and we have an uncomfortable uncertainty about how we're going to be challenged in the coming months and years. So I just want to think small and local this morning, because we live in a comparatively small community. It's no secret, we're in a time of great division. There are wounds. There's separation between human beings, between friends and neighbors, between family members. We have one friend that had to cancel Thanksgiving dinner with the family this year because the family is so broken apart. Relationships that may have been cordial may now seem strained. So for people of faith committed to living in community, the work of repair is a spiritual practice. So maybe we can just plant the seeds of an intention together about the possibility of the spiritual practice of forgiveness as a tool, and how that tool could be in our toolbox and maybe help us to move from disrepair to repair. It's funny, as I was writing this sermon, I realized how close the word disrepair is to despair. Just a matter of moving a couple of letters. But it's possible that we might be able to make the leap. We might be able to see clearly a reconciling way forward. Forgiveness is challenging and difficult, but it is a tool that we can stash in our toolbox. There's an Australian psychologist, her name is Stephanie Dowrick, and she wrote a book called Forgiveness and Other Acts of Love. And she wrote this: forgiveness deeply offends the rational mind. When someone has hurt us, wounded us, abused us, when someone has stolen peace of mind or safety from us, when someone has simply misunderstood or offended us, there is no reason why we should let that offense go. There's no reason why we should try to understand it. There's no reason why we should hope for enlightenment for the other person. There's no reason why, from our own pain and darkness, we should summon up compassion and insight for that person, as well as for ourselves. To grope our way toward forgiveness, we may need to circumvent the rational mind. And there's no easy way to talk about circumventing or transcending it. And there is certainly no easy way to put forgiveness into practice. Close quote. So for the moment, perhaps what we can do is set an intention to be forgiving. And from the safe distance of a simple intention, perhaps we can allow ourselves in our mind's eye to see what situation, what person, what attitude most wounds us, and then begin the strenuous work of intentional healing, remembering that to forgive does not mean to condone. I want to say that again. To forgive does not mean to condone. It does not mean forgetting, as in forgive and forget. Rather, the work is to remember and forgive. Dowrick continues writing. She says, as challenging and single-pointed as it is, forgiveness may be the supreme virtue, the greatest act of love, because it declares, I will attempt to go on loving the life in you, or the divine in you, or the soul in you, even when I totally abhor what you have done or what you stand for. Dowrick also points out that forgiveness is first and foremost an inner work that changes us, even though it might never change the target of our forgiveness or reconcile a relationship. It's an inner work. With intention to forgive, we can begin letting go of our attachment to our own grievances and disappointments and resentments and let our own healing begin. We may be able to find more spaciousness within, and then perhaps, just perhaps, we might observe changes in others that will happen as a result of our own inner healing. A second tool, and perhaps a little bit more fun to work with, and it was so lovely that you used that blessing, Chris, that was just beautiful this morning, because the second tool is the art of blessing. It's fun to work with because I kind of mischievously think of it as being quite subversive. Human beings are a natural source of blessing. The art of blessing is a human attribute that arises out of the impulse to create community and to support life. And we each have the ability to make choices about how we'll act, what kind of effect we want to have on the world. It's wonderful when the impulse to bless arises out of a full, generous heart full of gratitude. But it's when we are able to make the choice to bless, even though everything in us wants to curse and strike out, it's then that we demonstrate the power of the human soul to choose what creates life and wholeness. David Spangler is the former director of the Findhorn community in Northern Ireland, and he offers this. Within each soul is a passion, an inner fire born of love, and an intelligence profoundly immersed in the wholeness of all creation, an intelligence burning with compassion. A blessing is this very soul fire made manifest when our angry and hurt heart chooses to bless in spite of its pain. Then we ourselves become the kindling that allows this fire to release its light into the world. How do we bless? You heard a lot of them. That reading is certainly worth revisiting. But it can be as simple as wishing for the other a sense of safety and well-being. Many of you are familiar with the Buddhist metta, the loving kindness prayer. It's very simple, but very profound. It starts by blessing oneself, and then gradually expands out from there, eventually wishing good intentions for the entire world and all beings, even our enemies. There are many variations and translations of this prayer, but the essence of it is this: may my heart be filled with loving kindness. May I love myself. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be peaceful. May I be free. And then extending those same blessings to those we love, to the broader community, to those whom we abhor, and eventually to the whole world. Spangler writes, like life, all blessings come from a single source, the soul fire of intelligent love and compassion, willing to give of itself. Whether they are simple or complex, obvious or subtle, planned or spontaneous, blessings happen when this soul fire is released and shared. Blessing happens when a heart opens and we find all of us there in it. Close quote. Learning how to bless changes us. And when we change, our relation to the world and to the other changes as well. The art of blessing. I like to call it a tool of repair that subverts the dominant paradigm. And then finally, there are the practical tools for repair that resonate down to us through the ages, over 2,500 years or so, from the prophet Isaiah. And every time I read this passage, I just can't believe how contemporary it is. He offers pointed reminders of the tools we already have and the tools that we already know very well how to use in the work of repairing. I'm adding a few parenthetical comments here to the text. He spoke, remove the yoke of injustice among you. Remove the pointing finger of shaming and blaming. Remove the speaking of evil, the dis and misinformation. If you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom will be like the noonday. You will be guided continually. Your needs will be satisfied in the parched places. Your bones will be made strong. You shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. You shall be called repairers of the breach and the restorers of streets to live in. You shall be called repairers of the breach. Isaiah's words remind us of the most essential tools for repair, and they will become indispensable for us in the months and perhaps years to come. The tools for repair that are most readily at hand are the tools we already use with skill. Welcoming all the diversity of all our fellow human beings, feeding our neighbors, working at providing shelter for the unhoused, seeking justice for the stranger in our gates, protecting our natural resources, building beloved community. The prophet Micah envisioned a future balance to be restored when he promised all will sit under their own grapevines, under their own fig trees, and no one will be afraid. The most accessible tools for the repair work that we need to do are embodied in the work we have already been doing and doing well and will continue to do, being always ready to step into the breach and become the repairers that the world so desperately needs. May it be so. Amen.